Welcome to Have a Kind Word with Yourself, a podcast that helps us to keep kind, creative, and connected. My name is Rose Kondo, and I'm your host. I'm a poet, a performer, an ardent lover of libraries, and I love connecting with communities. Today's guest has loads of experience in, as he says, bringing art and audiences together. And while he might not call himself a creative, there is definitely artistry in what he does. We chat through the letters in the word kind, and we go from hyper-local to global in our discussion. But before we jump in, I would love for you to take a moment to think about some kind words that have been said to you. Can you think of a compliment that you received that really gave you a boost or helped you to feel seen and appreciated? I'm really good at brushing off or blowing past compliments. A voice inside me says I shouldn't be prideful or get big-headed. But I'm learning, and these chats are certainly teaching me that it's okay to feel good about and maybe even savor kind words and compliments. Okay, let's get these kind words rolling. My guest today is Ivan Wadeson. Ivan has over 25 years' experience in the arts and heritage sector. He is the executive director of Manchester City of Literature, whose vision is to create an innovative, distinctive, equitable, globally connected city of reading and writing. As part of UNESCO's Creative Cities Network, Manchester City of Literature connects with literary organizations across the city and literally globally. Their Festival of Libraries won Best Event at the Manchester Cultural Awards. I went to it last year and absolutely loved it, and I'm thrilled that it'll be coming back in 2026. I also bump into Ivan at literary events around Greater Manchester, and I get the vibes that he is someone who is amazing at connecting folks. What a joy to have you here. Welcome, Ivan, to Have a Kind Word with Yourself.
Thank you very much, Rose. Very, very pleased to be here.
Oh, brilliant. I wondered, Ivan, to kind of start us off, what are some kind words that you've heard recently?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, you can say there's a lack of kind words in, in political discourse and in the media at the moment. Um, so the ones I suppose I can't think. I'm not necessarily thinking of particular words, but I'm thinking of particular people who
Okay.
I'm around, just in terms of family and friends, and in terms of the people who I work with at Manchester City of Literature. And I suppose it's about those words that signal that someone's thinking of you,
Hmm.
whether checking in or just asking something of you in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Those genuine questions of checking in or how are you that go beyond the kind of regular platitudes, hey?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not the best at it at all. I can be a bit too task oriented, focused on work or whatever I'm doing. So I really appreciate when other people are playing that role and reminding me that I need to play part of that role too.
Yeah, I love that. A nice reminder. Because certainly you have a lot of plates spinning at the same time. So I'm sure it's not for a lack of interest, but it is nice to get those reminders for sure. And a couple other questions before we start. One of them is, I wonder if you remember how our paths first crossed.
I think it possibly, probably was when you took my mobile phone off me. And I
That
think that,
took me a moment.
yeah, that would have been at the King's Arms in
Yes,
Salford.
that's
And
right.
and was that the empathy experiment?
It was. So for
Yes.
context, I didn't mug Ivan.
In the
Yeah.
nicest possible way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I took his
Yeah.
phone as part of a poetry show that I was doing, the Empathy Experiment, where I invited people to hand over their phones during the show. And that's the first time we crossed paths. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a while ago now. But yeah, it was lovely to see you in the audience and share that show. And then, like I said in the intro, we do kind of cross paths at lots of other literary events. So, yeah, you're so active in the community. And with all of the work that you do, the hats that you wear and have worn, I'd really love to know what you love most about the work that you do, the creative work that you do.
Um, well, it's interesting you say creative work, 'cause I'm not a creator. So I'm not a writer, I'm not an artist. But I think all my career, all the different jobs I've done, what I'm really interested in is bringing art and audiences together in whatever that art form is, whoever the people are. And I think that's been a constant that's been done in different ways, working in box offices, in a market team, leading organizations or venues, and in the current job with Manchester City of Literature.
Hmm.
Um, so, and what I get out of that really is seeing the impact that art can have on people. I was very lucky early in my life. I grew up in a family with no interest in arts and culture, no books at home. It was my way in was my mum taking me to the local library and
Yeah.
realizing I could borrow books each week. Um, and then I've just in my early life growing up, I got so much out of the arts and culture. Um, and so it's really wanting to try and share that type of experience with other people, not imposing what I think people should do, but that sense of, I don't know, wonder and surprise and connection you get, letting other people have a chance to experience some of that.
That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And I would maybe gently push back to say that there is some creativity in that, in the building of communities that you do through that connection, through the connecting art and audiences together. And certainly we see that kind of flourishing through the current work that you do and the, like you say, the past work that you've done as well. And yeah, gosh, the childhood memories of libraries as well. Hey, there's just something really special about that and that discovery of knowing that you can take some of that home with you and share it with other people. It's one thing that I know many of us in literary circles are so keen to hang on to in our increasingly digital world.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Festival of Libraries at the top, and I think that is a model really celebrating libraries in all their form, public, independent, specialist, historic. Um, but it's in our current society, the libraries are truly the only free and democratic space in
Yeah,
towns and cities and neighborhoods. No, you can spend the day in the library and no one will be asking you to buy a coffee. No one will be chasing you up. And you can spend that time how you want with support from, library staff if you want. So yeah, really, really special places that deserve to be celebrated.
definitely. Oh, I love that. It also reminds me of, so Manchester Central Library is one of my favorite places in Manchester, that big, beautiful round building. And I was going there to do some freelance work one day, very much with that in mind. I had a little packed lunch with me, had coffee in my thermos, and was going to go and park up one day. And arrived there just before it opened, forgetting that it was exam revision time. And there were like literally hundreds of students outside waiting to get in. And I was both kind of like, stressed because I thought, oh no, I'm gonna have to sharpen my elbows to find a spot to sit. And also so excited that the building was getting used in by so many people. And I did
Absolutely.
manage to find a little corner to use, so that was good.
Yep. The busiest public library in the UK, 2 million
Is
visits,
it?
2 million visits a year before COVID. I think it's back up to 1.7 million now. So you're right,
Wow.
much loved and well used building.
Love that. Oh, fabulous. Well, we are going to jump into our kind chat. And as you know, I'm using each letter in the word kind to kind of frame our discussion. And with the first letter being K, the word that I've chosen is kitchen. So, Ivan, I'd love to know what's in your creative kitchen, meaning what do you use to kind of cook up or create kindness towards yourself?
That's a good question. The kitchen word can potentially be misleading because I do some cooking, but it's Not very imaginative, have to follow a recipe. Other members of my family are much more proficient at improvising and coming up with tasty food. The first thing that occurred to me, and it won't be a surprise linking to the current job, but is the initiative that Read Manchester developed called Take 10 to Read, or Take 10, which
Mm.
is so this is Manchester Libraries, Manchester Education, together with the National Literacy Trust. It is based on, evidence about the impact of reading on well-being. But they each October, on the 10th of October, which is World Mental Health Day, just set that challenge just for people to share what are they reading on that day and just spend 10 minutes reading. So it's a really simple campaign that started in Manchester. It's been taken up in other parts of the UK. And I think back to those childhood visits through to the libraries, fast forward all the way to this job.
Mm.
Um, yeah, reading has been a constant, really, about finding inspiration in stories, in different perspectives, in different cultures, in different views. So there's definitely been that. I think in terms of kindness to myself, the this was it started later on in life, but in my 30s, I um, started running,
Okay.
and um, and I think this is well, yeah, this is me being kind to myself. Is that time, and particularly at that age, with a family, kids growing up, it is that time to yourself. I found so I'd literally would go out in the local park and just run round, and then
Mm.
over time, I enjoyed it so much. I eventually started doing 5Ks and 10Ks and so on. But I really find that time, it's the only physical exercise I get. So there's
Mm.
definitely the benefits of physical exercise, but really positive benefits about mental well-being. So I think it's a moment running along the side of the River Mersey or
Mm.
local water parks near to where I am. One, you're out in nature, but also either emptying my mind, um, or I actually can think almost unconsciously think over problems and come up with solutions,
Yeah.
or just be creative. So I think those two things to me, reading and running.
Reading and running. Yeah, what a good combination. And so incredible to hear about the Take 10 initiative. We'll be sure to put links for that in the show notes. And I really love how running sounds like it has evolved really organically for you without kind of starting with that aim of immediately going, I'm going to do the London Marathon, but just letting it respond to what you need and how it really kind of feeds you and supports your mental health as well as your physical health. Well, our next letter is I, and the word I have for I is inspiration, which you've kind of touched on a little bit as well. But are there other places where you find inspiration?
Um, yes, I would say in people, and I'm not thinking of the sort of heroic model of a person, but I'm thinking of the people who, quietly and kindly get on with their lives and with helping others. And I'm also thinking of artists,
Mm,
and the inspiration I've got from those people. So what they created. So thinking about the artists. So as you say, um, in my bio, I've been working in the sector an awful long time. So I've managed to get to see and view and engage and listen and read a lot.
yeah.
Um, and it's those moments where, a dancer, an artist, a painter, a writer can just surprise you, capture something that speaks to you,
Mm,
shares something that's magic and wondrous. Um, and I suppose if I am in a rut of whatever time, a blue mood or in terms of a creative rut, I think it's that's what I'd go and find out is listen to a piece of music, go and see a gig, read a book, poem, short story, um, just to sort of move out of that by what people do. Yeah, so it's interesting that um, I worked in the 90s, I worked at Sadler's Wells
Hmm.
and in London, which is the dance house. I had no experience of working in the dance sector, and I was quite open about, I'd seen a handful of dance companies in
Right.
my life, but I was really keen saying, I've got no, experience in the dance sector, and go, that's fine. This building
Hmm.
is crammed with people. We're interested in your marketing, experience and expertise. But since then, I've just constantly, um, whenever I can get to see dance, I will find a way. And I've recently just stepped down as a board member with from Without Walls, which is the outdoor arts consortium. And again, there's a strong presence of dance and movement work there in the outdoor arts sector. So, and I just some of those individuals and those companies, the work they create is truly breathtaking.
Gosh, it's one giant step to be starting with a company, like you say, in the 90s, and to not have vocabulary or knowledge of dance and to find a love of it. And I think that can be kind of inspiring, perhaps, for other people who may find a bit of intimidation in approaching a bit of art in whatever form that is, whether it's dance or poetry or music or theater or visual arts. You know, that intimidation of not knowing the language, not knowing how to understand it, and maybe feeling a bit of confidence that that's okay. You'll still be moved, and however you respond is right because that's your response.
Yeah, I think there's an important word you use there, Rose, which is vocabulary. So again, a lot of my work in arts marketing and audience development is about the language we use and the copy to inform and persuade. And so much of the arts and cultural sector uses difficult specialist language that
Yeah.
borders on jargon, which
Yeah.
for most people, a inverted commas first time attender, is often meaningless if not off-putting. So I often think there's definitely a theme there about talking about art in an unaffected and simple way. And I think the other thing that is difficult for people obviously is threshold anxiety when you're looking at work that is presented in a building, and in the UK and in our cities that's often a 19th century um, quite intimidating building with large doors and big stone staircases. um, so there's something about getting past that language, getting past those buildings and going back to outdoor arts. I think that was one reason I was really keen to put myself forward, apply to be on the board of Without Walls, because I think outdoor arts, work that's out in the outdoor, takes away a lot of that threshold anxiety. Um, Performers um, who are trained really to respond to people in the moment and what's happening.
Yeah.
And that sense of you don't need vocabulary, you don't need the history of an art form at your fingertips to be able to understand what you're seeing and to engage with it.
Yeah.
Mm.
It makes me think of a conversation I had with Paul Beeson, who's a Scottish actor. He was on our episode 3, and he was talking about the link between theater and football. So they had written a show exploring Hearts Midlothian in the beginning of World War I, and they did it in the actual football stadium and would have football fans come along not expecting to be moved by theater. And so I think it is finding those spaces where it can be a maybe unexpected connection. So outdoor arts, or I think even libraries can be settings for that if people are coming in expecting a certain experience and maybe suddenly encountering something they wouldn't have thought to see there, but connect with it still somehow.
Yeah, and coincidentally, or rather not coincidentally, but all 5 editions of the Festival of Libraries I've had a dance company in them so far, and
Wow.
and the sixth one this year will be no different.
Amazing. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait. That's awesome. Well, our next letter is N, and the word I've chosen for N is noticing. And I know you've certainly spoken about noticing inspiration, noticing connection, but this is particularly what are you noticing about kindness these days?
Mm. Yeah, these days it feels like quite loaded and heavy words at the moment, don't they?
Doesn't it
Um,
just?
I think the main thing to say, I think kindness absolutely still exists, but it feels drowned out in the attention economy, in the news cycle, in divisive hate speech, and the way that social media is used there. So I think that's really difficult. Um, I was actually, I mean, it's going back a little in time, but the COVID pandemic lockdowns to me were a time where we saw much more kindness on our screens, you know, newspapers, radio is reported much more. And I think people are much more conscious of it. So there was a lot of the simple act of being a good neighbour and checking in
Yeah.
on people, the way that people were forming support groups locally in a very strange and scary time. Um, and then there's lots of then initiatives. I mean, we at Manchester City of Literature got involved with the Creative Care Packages project that Greater Manchester Combined Authority Arts team created, which was really for people who were homebound, distributing packs for them to be creative in their own homes. So there's huge examples. I don't know if you know the poet and performer Hafsa Anila Bashir, but
Mm,
during lockdown, she started to share poems on Instagram. And she got such a response from it. She created the Poetry Pharmacy, which is almost prescribing poems for your need. I mean, there's other models like that. So I think there was a lot of that. And I got reminded about David Byrne from Talking Heads,
yeah.
musician and writer, started an initiative called Reasons to be Cheerful. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this was COVID era, and I looked it up. It was actually 2017. So we've
Wow.
had, and this was in response to doom scrolling and the news cycle of horrific news around the world. So there's something about, yes, kindness still exists. There are still acts happening, but they get squashed out. I'm not a fan of the monarchy, but the I always think when we have the New Year's honours list, it's all the media focus is on the sports stars, the great and good of the cultural world or even the business world and what they've done. And actually, all the people, the people who do get awards, who've run a netball club or a football club for young people for 30 years,
Mm.
barely make an impression. And those are the moments of kindness that still exist. And we don't see and hear enough of them.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing in there is a real sense of that kind of hyper local presence of kindness that is still very much alive, but yeah, it doesn't have that broad presence, I guess, in the ways that we are absorbing information, which is by and large social media. But yeah, I remember that during the pandemic, that sense of what can I do in my immediate surroundings to support people, to connect with people, to stay in touch. And I remember a surge of well-being initiatives and special offers and online workshops and courses for mental health and creativity just suddenly, exploded. And I remember talking with so many fellow creatives going like, we should have this all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, right now, very much needed, but it's always needed as a tool for staying well. But yeah, that idea of people who are doing things within their direct communities should be celebrated more. I completely agree.
And As well, I think you're right about hyperlocal. And an example that had a global reach, I don't know if you remember, but Carol Ann Duffy, the poet
Hmm.
who just finished her 10 years as UK Poet Laureate in 2020, launched Right Where We Are Now. And again, it was a global poetry exchange, online exchange about the impact of the pandemic on daily life. And it
Mm.
was quite extraordinary. I mean, Carol Ann Duffy marshaled, professional poets around the world, but and she's based at Manchester Metropolitan University, but the university were inundated with not professional poets, but submitting their work, and they had to create a website specially to host all that work. So as well, there's those initiatives that can be global and can have an impact. And it's interesting. I don't just having thought about those strange couple of years of the lockdowns, and when we could see and hear more of kindness, was that also partly because, if you like, the politicians were were not sitting in the UK in the Houses of Parliament. We were not having the constant media cycle about political issues. So actually taking all those the Westminster machinations away enables the true stories to come out.
Isn't that a good perspective? Because there are often those discussions about how the media feeds into the doom and gloom and doom scrolling that we all do. Couldn't we please report on more positive stories? And I think that sometimes is seen as a bit like rose-colored glasses or, that's never going to happen. And from you saying that, it's like, well, even though it was a global crisis, it kind of did.
Yeah. And the attention economy is all about wanting people to be outraged. It's about,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
I
a
guess
cycle.
it is, isn't it? And I think in a bizarre way that kind of feeds into the final letter, which is about dreaming. So the letter is D and the word is dream. And we are caught in these cycles and we do have some agency, we do have some choice, but it can feel like such hard work to resist against it. And, you've said in this conversation that kindness is truly alive and well in our midst. And I guess for the future, what do you dream of for kindness?
At a basic level, that it still exists and it's still prosperous. I mean, ultimately, I'm an optimist, and I really hope, the last 30 years have seen a shift to selfishness, to corporate greed, and to power and wealth being in a smaller and smaller band of people. So I don't know what the moment is that redresses that, but I
Yeah.
do think at some point there'll be a reckoning for some of these bad actors,
Mm.
and that we will have to readjust. It could be, ecological collapse. It could be something else that leads us to that. So I do think that there will be a time when the age of self-interest is over,
Mm.
and that we can be society can be genuinely and openly kind, because I think there are people who are genuinely open and kind. At the moment, the way society is constituted and the way it's reported suggests that's not the case. And I love the way you used agency and choice there, because a lot of the authoritarian figures at the moment who are dominating the headlines and social media want people to think there is no choice, and they hold the only solutions. And that is not the case. Um, so I often feel people as individuals, we can't topple, an extreme authoritarian regime in a different country like the United States. And okay, we can call it out on social media, but I think really people like ourselves working in education, arts, charitable sectors, we almost need to double down on what we're doing in terms of work that builds empathy, that builds connection, that builds bridges between people, communities, different groups, cultures, shows there is a better way to live and there's a better way to treat people. So I want that to come back, and or to be seen more strongly. and to live quite strongly. And I was going to reference the Emily St. John Mandel novel, Station 11.
I have just read Sea of Tranquility and
Ah,
loved it. So Station 11 is on my
I,
list.
oh, I haven't read that. Okay, so this is a slight spoiler.
Okay,
Right.
I can
Okay,
deal. It's okay.
but so Station 11 is post-apocalyptic novel, very dystopian.
Mm,
Starts in the present day with a pandemic, written obviously written before COVID-19, that not only shuts down the planet, it kills something like 80% of the population. And then the novel looks about 20, I think it's 20 or 30 years in the future. And there's a lot of, there's no electricity anymore. There's no society. So people are living in small, isolated communities. And there is a lot of violence and fighting. But also, there is the traveling symphony. So a group of people have come together and they tour encampments performing Shakespeare and playing Beethoven and other classical music. And it's not that those, heroic figures, the canon, those dead white men are the thing that's going to save us, but art, even in this, it's a very grim novel. Even in that grim depiction of the future, art persists and it connects people. So much like that, kindness kindness will out.
definitely. I feel really inspired by those words as well, Ivan, that sense of doubling down of those of us who do it to keep doing it and to find those ways where it has impact, where it has meaning. It'll plant seeds for other people, but it'll keep us really resourced to continue this so that it doesn't get fizzled out. It doesn't get completely drowned out. And oh man, I really want to read Station 11 now. I think Kieran, my husband, is reading it, so I'll have to tell him to hurry up. And it's great that it's a Canadian author too. Nice to have a little Canadian content here, other than myself. As you were talking, though, I also got thinking back to what you were saying at the beginning about libraries, because they continue to exist and they have their challenges. Definitely, they have issues of funding, and lots of libraries are run by volunteers because there isn't always, money to pay for staff. But I think about places like in Manchester, the Manchester Central Library. There's a beautiful Millennium Library in Winnipeg, the city that I'm from. Anytime I've moved around to different places, I've always sought out libraries to go and work in. And it's an idea that's not fully formed yet, but I think what I'm drawing from this is they still persist. So that's such a beacon of hope, that these institutions of democracy and space and community and welcome persist and thrive in a lot of places. And even in the doom and gloom of the world, the fact that that kind of iconic space is still important to a lot of people is a kind of boost for like, all right, let's keep this going then.
Yeah. And I think, you talked about the UNESCO Creative Cities Network at the top. I mean, through that network and through that, you can see models where cities are investing in large flagship institute libraries, large flagship libraries in cities. I'm thinking of places like Dock One in Aarhus in Denmark, and the library in Helsinki, whose name I've forgotten. And it's interesting that one in Helsinki. There was definitely a travel article in a UK national paper talking. I think it was one of those where it gets people to recommend things to do in Helsinki, and this came up strongly. And people were saying, "Oh, you can make things there, and you can play musical instruments in the library." And it's just wanting to say you can do that in Manchester Central Library. That's
Yeah.
it's not just that place, but also we see libraries being invested in a neighborhood level. Quebec City in Canada, Gothenburg in Sweden are doing a lot of work around their neighborhood libraries, Melbourne and Australia as well. So we're seeing that firsthand and through our colleagues. So there is a global movement around that, definitely.
Love that. I love that we've gone hyper local and global in the space of a conversation. Ivan, I have absolutely loved this chat. Thank you so, so much. I have a couple of very short questions before we wrap up.
Of course.
Is this a short question? Maybe not. The theme of this podcast is looking at ways to help us keep kind, creative, and connected. And I would love for your top tip of how we can do that.
It's something I've certainly been thinking of recently, and it's just reflecting on those words back to you is about being connected. And again, reminding ourselves about the COVID lockdowns where we weren't connected necessarily. So I think there's something about thinking about real life connections and prioritizing those over social media and virtual ones. There's a lot of benefits to social media and to Zoom and to those platforms, but I think there's something about really deep exchange and deep conversation and understanding people comes from actually meeting and spending time with people. And I did read a great quotation from Oliver Berkman, who wrote Meditations for Mortals, which is like an anti-help book. Um, I wouldn't have picked it up except it was a book club choice. But and again, one of his themes is a shift away from social media. But there's a line that he wrote, which is fantastic, which was, before the internet, people weren't concerned that they hadn't read every book in the British Library. So
Right.
why should we be concerned now that we haven't consumed every piece of news, every piece of information on the internet? So it's absolutely, we're absolutely in an age of information overload. And I think it is just taking away some of that overload as a part of being kind to yourself, but also creating that space for connection with people.
Fabulous. Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of potluck dinners, like community suppers where people come
Yeah,
together. I
yeah,
was really in mind as you were saying that, like just people coming together, sharing food or playing chess or whatever it is, to bring people face to face.
absolutely.
There's so much benefit that comes from it. Well, I look forward to when I can cross paths with you face to face again at some point.
I'm sure it'll be very soon.
I hope so. Is there anything that you want to plug or promote that's coming up?
Oh, I will never duck a plug, will I? Will, but when it's for the Festival of Libraries. So just to say, Festival of Libraries will be happening across Greater Manchester, 10th to the 14th of June this year. We're hard at work on it already, and we'll be announcing the programme, or certainly the first wave, probably late March, early April. So look at manchestercityofliterature.com for that. Sign up to our newsletter to be informed of what's happening, where, and when.
Brilliant.
Mm.
Excellent. I will put all of those links, as well as the many other links from our chat, in our show notes. But for now, just enormous thanks for this time, Ivan, and also for the work that you do, the connecting that you make happen, and the communities that you are cultivating. It's just such important work. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rose. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it was great to have a moment to reflect on some of this because you're right. In the hurly burly of the working world, you can often forget this. So it's great to take a moment to think about this. Thank you.
That was such a thoughtful and generous chat. When Ivan spoke so brilliantly about libraries, I was transported back to the first library I visited as a child, Verdun General Library, deep in the Canadian prairies. And I remember the smell of the books and the shelves in the kids section that were full of colorful children's books, the Dr. Seuss stories we took home by the armful. And stories are what connect us. So much inspiration from Ivan and his words and his work. My notebook is full of links I've written down to add to the show notes. And hey, perhaps our paths might cross at the Manchester Festival of Libraries in June. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening. We'll have another episode coming your way soon. You can like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. If you want to find out more about me and my work, you can drop me a line through my website, rosecondo.net. And on my website, there is wonderful artwork by Neve Wood, also known as Little Badger. Our beautiful music has been composed and recorded by Eleonora Rosca. And finally, please share this. Help us to keep kind, creative, and connected.